Why freedom is never free. I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. So happy 4th of July, everybody. It happens to fall on a Sunday, which is really fun to celebrate today. It's a beautiful day here in Colorado. And as you can see, I'm not in my typical surroundings again. I'm here at my parents' home celebrating 4th of July with them today, which will be super fun. And it was so neat as I was driving into their neighborhood. They live in a beautiful community here in right outside of Denver. And all the kids were decorating and red, white, and blue and running through their side streets and everything here. It was just so sweet and so much collective activity. There was music being played. So I hope wherever you are today, you're able to tap into that celebratory spirit. I know as a country, we are going through so much polarity right now. But you know, guys, this is life. We're always going to have people who disagree with us, who see things differently from us. Things are never going to be perfect. I've got a leaf blower going on behind me. Lots of sound here today, but I also have like amazing like hummingbirds and other birds like flying around. So it's never going to be perfect, right? So we have to remember that. But today's talk, I thought like why it would be good to talk about why freedom is never free. Because in this country, I was born into this country and I'm a native. And I also had the opportunity to travel the world, to visit the townships in Africa, to visit the slums in India, to travel all four out of the 5 continents, to be able to experience how other people live and what privileges and pleasures we do have and freedoms we have in this country that are just, I take for granted every single day. But traveling has really been so instrumental in my growth and my understanding and appreciation of my life, my appreciation of my freedoms in this country. And then also just living in New York City for 20 years, shoulder to shoulder with my neighbors from Egypt, India, from all over the place, all over the world, in Queens, the most culturally diverse county in the entire world, according to the census, right? So, I mean, I had the pleasure and privilege of living in that kind of diversity for 20 years, and I don't take that for granted. It taught me so much about people who left their home, all that they knew, to come to this country to build a life for themselves, to send money back to their families, to be able to take the advantage of the opportunities that they have here in this country. So, but I also started thinking about, you know, aside from freedom being an absolute defining characteristic of this country, we all struggle with freedom in our own lives and our self-expression and our relationships. And they don't suffer from self-expression freedom up there. But just the freedom in our bodies and the freedom in our ability to be vulnerable and have intimacy in our lives. So that's what today's talk is about. Thanks for joining me. Let's dive right in. So we live in a time of instant gratification. And anything that was ever worth fighting for, whether it be freedom or for something we wanted to create in our lives, anything we're fighting for took commitment, it took consistency, it took passion, it took a delay of gratification to find that. And because we have so many things that come to us so easily in today's day and age, especially in this country, we forget that life is challenging. It is hard. There are aspects to it that you're not going to find intimacy. You're not going to find real, true freedom in your relationship unless you sit in those difficult moments, you have those challenging conversations, you self-reflect, you allow yourself to be vulnerable. You're not going to be a fabulous musician unless you put in the practice times. You're not going to have the freedom of artistry unless you harness that emotional vulnerability. And so, you know, in being in this conversation about freedom today, I thought also how appropriate it is to talk about children. And children in this country, or children where they have a lot of freedoms, where, you know, the parents especially are trying to give them everything that they need. And yet, if a child, and this is very much chakra related to those of you who are into the chakra system, that if we don't have a supportive structure of limitation and discipline in those early developmental years, we won't feel safe. We won't feel the freedom of knowing where we end and where someone else begins, or what the rules are. And as adults, if we don't have that kind of discipline as children, then we don't know how to build our own discipline. I don't even know what the word is, but like our own way of disciplining ourselves so that we can commit to things that we want and achieve them, rather than just hoping that they come to us. So in those developmental ages as children, if in the development of the second to the third chakra, if we don't have around 5 to 8 years old those boundaries, those structures, in even the consequences of when we're not doing something in accordance with the rules, that we do see consequences. We see the law of cause and effect in real time. And that way we learn that something like, okay, well, if we don't feel like doing something, that we can still overcome the lack of instant desire to just quit and stick to it. And anything that's been worth attained you have to delay that instant gratification. You have to delay the comfort zone or the wanting to just be relaxed or safe or comfortable, and put something out there that really helps you move beyond where you are in order to get to where you need to be. I just drooled. So, anything like that in our lives, if we're not taught that as children, we must learn it as adults. And as we get into that third chakra where we connect with our identity, oh, hello, hummingbird, where we connect with our identity, where we associate ourselves with certain labels, where we have a level of confidence or lack of thereof. So insecurity can really come from not seeing yourself and overcoming. Something that we did as kids is we were involved in sports, and sports taught us diligence. It taught us teamwork. It taught us overcoming our physical limitations and going for it, really, really moving beyond who we thought we were or what we were capable of. Another amazing thing that I was exposed to as a child, as a musician, was having to practice for an hour every day on the piano. Now, as a musician, I was listening to this awesome playlist for 4th of July today that I found on Spotify. I think it's called the Freedom Playlist, but it was such a cool playlist, and the very first song that came on was American Girl by Tom Petty. And then, of course, I was listening to Stars and Stripes Forever and all these amazing songs that really celebrate our country and how beautiful, what a land we live in. I mean, Anthony and I did a 50-city tour around the U.S. in addition to traveling all over the world. And I have to say, our country is stunning. It's so beautiful. If you have not traveled in this country, figure out a way to get out there and visit. It is so diverse and so beautiful. And when I was listening to this playlist this morning, and Tom Petty came on, who's one of my favorites, and everybody knows the song. I think everybody should know the song, American Girl. Right? She was an American girl. Such a fun, invigorating song. And I thought about this as I was prepping for the talk today. A musician doesn't have freedom unless there's absolute diligence. There's absolute diligence in practice and commitment to that emotional vulnerability so that you can harness that artistry and the mastery of playing the instrument, or whatever it is, or singing, or using your own body as that instrument singing. And what's so cool about the beginning of this song, the introduction, and you'll notice next time you listen to it, is that this song that's so iconic, it starts in the beginning, and the guitar, which I assume he's playing because he's the amazing guitarist in that band, just riffs on the same note, even though the bass line in the background is shifting chords and whatnot. It just riffs on the same note, and it's such a simplicity that he brings to the beginning of that song, where you just kind of feel it's almost like a call to action. It's almost like this call to get excited about this song, and it really works. And it also happens in the bridge too. And why it works so well, and why he was able to do that with such simplicity and mastery and freedom, was because he knows how to overcomplicate things. He knows how intricate a musical number can be. He knows how to do all the licks on the guitar. It's not like he could have done this amazing solo at the beginning of that song, but he just riffs on this one chord. And those musicians out there, I know I'm kind of nerding out in the music realm right now, but it proves the point of sometimes we'll go all the way around the world and understand the simplicity of that freedom of just focusing on that one thing. That's meditation, right? So a musician really, and Tom Petty in this case, is able to see like the amazing aspect of just riffing on this one chord of the song. Listen to that song today. You'll hear what I mean. It's amazing. And it's just the same chord, as the bass line moves behind it. Pretty cool, right? And then let's talk about like freedom of body, right? I saw this great post, maybe in the last couple weeks, that talked about, it's always gonna be hard. Like if you're overweight, that's hard, right? If you're in shape, that's hard. Yesterday I ran 2 miles. This is not ordinary, by the way. I ran like 3 miles and I swam 50 laps. Like, I'm sore today. That was hard. But I love staying in shape so that I've got more freedom of body. But it would be just as hard as if I were not, because I would be able to avoid those workouts and just kind of coast through and get a little flabby and whatever. But it would still be hard because I wouldn't have freedom of movement. It would get harder as I grew older. I would lose that sense of freedom. So whatever choice we're choosing, guys, it's going to be hard either way. All right? It's going to be hard either way. And so like diligence and self-care and what you're eating and how you're moving your body and just how you're thinking about yourself, right? All of that diligence, that commitment creates a freedom that you can have in your body, a freedom you have in your mind. And that takes me to relationships, all right? If we want that real, true intimacy in our relationship that we see other people have. Anthony and I have an amazing relationship. And yes, I'm blessed with that man. And I'm blessed with that relationship. And have we worked our butts off to develop that depth of intimacy? You bet. There are so many late nights where we stayed up talking when both of us wanted to go to bed. Both of us wanted just to avoid the issue at hand or whatever we were arguing about. So many times we just wanted to brush something under the rug just so we didn't have to deal with it. Or, we wanted to point the finger at each other so we didn't have to look at ourselves and what was coming up within us. So it was hard to create that, and the freedom that we now feel with each other it brings me to tears. It is so valuable. It's the thing I value more than anything else in my life other than my relationship with my creator, okay? Like, it is so, so valuable. But you know what? It would have been just as hard if I chose to not be in a relationship and I was single. I could have avoided all of the conversations and the late nights and the self-reflection. But guess what? I would have been alone too, okay? So whether you're moving towards a relationship or you're in a difficult relationship right now, maybe you're in a marriage or a relationship that you just, stuff is coming up, and you guys, especially after this last year, so many couples are really going through it, especially with kids and having them home and all the layers of challenges that brings. So with freedom, if you want freedom again, if you want that, all of that opportunity in your life and have that freedom with your kids or with your partner, it's so, so crucial to be able to do the work, have the difficult conversations, face the things you don't want to talk about. If you need support couples with relationships, I'm a couples counselor. I coach couples all the time with how to bridge the gap between one another. If, and also it's like when you want something, you want freedom with your finances. I mean, that might be something you haven't looked at your bank account for a long time. That's hard, to be diligent about your finances, your spending, and to save up. And, maybe you're in a tough position for a very good reason. And at the same time, like, everything is challenging. So pick your challenges wisely. Be diligent, right? Because it's never going to be easy. We're never all going to get along. The doors aren't just going to open for you. It is about being diligent. And in that struggle, that's the reason why we have free will. That's the reason why nothing just comes to us, because the joy is in the attainment of the goal. It's finding who you are. It's finding out how to appreciate things rather than just taking them for granted. To really struggle and attain. I have trained all kinds of people with all kinds of incomes, from absolute the richest people on the planet to people who are barely making it, and to people who are homeless, to teaching people in hospitals in Chicago who are suffering from gunshot wounds. I've taught a lot of people across the board, and I can tell you this: life doesn't differentiate based on your comfort zone, okay, or your paycheck or whatever privileges you have. for a child who's raised and has a silver spoon in their mouth as they're born and they've got everything available to them, they struggle with not having the confidence from having made their own way. So many times they rebel, right? We can always point to our victimhood. We can always point to what's not fair for us. But if we trust in the unfolding of our life, if we say, you know, it's not about getting the perfect poker hand, it's how you play it, right? It's how you play it. And, you know, in this life, you know, some of us have more privileges than others, but that doesn't mean that that it's not a level playing field in the way that we have the opportunities that we do, especially in this country. So the challenges that we're faced with, I struggle with things that you don't struggle with. You struggle with things that I don't struggle with, okay? But it is how we meet those struggles. It's how we meet those struggles. It's our resiliency that has us know ourselves, that has us open to the pleasures and the fruit of this beautiful life. And, you know, I cannot talk about this day without the freedom of that we have of self-expression. You know, our very first, you know, freedom to articulate, because it's the most important, our freedom of self-expression, the freedom of speech. But guess what? We can't be free in our self-expression if we don't do the diligence of that self-inquiry, if we don't surrender our need for others' approval, our care of what other people think, that egoic addiction that we have. So the freedom of self-expression, that is something that's so extraordinary that we have in this country, and I can't bring that up without honoring and paying homage to those men and women who volunteer, who even answered the call when we had a draft in this country, who've protected our freedom. My beautiful friend Mary, who spent all last summer in the desert of Afghanistan, away from her 3 beautiful children and her husband. Like, these people every day are the heroes of helping protect and maintain our freedom. And so just remember, you know, the reason why we can celebrate the pride of being other than straight in this country, celebrating sexuality for an entire month, that you have your freedom to love who you love. That's a privilege in this country. That is why we have the freedom of speech. And if we can stand for that for everyone, if we can remember that, you know, we worked hard as a country. If you read history, if you learn from it, if you remember it, we can really honor that the freedom that we have in this country did not happen overnight. It is precious, and just like taking it for granted in your relationship, you might take your relationship for granted if you stop nurturing. You might take your artistry and the freedom you have as a musician, or whatever you do really well, whatever you're a master of really well, if you stop practicing, if you stop really putting in the hours of that simple framework of the freedom that you have. And with your body, you can take that for granted if you stop exercising, if you just start eating whatever you want to fulfill that instant gratification of your taste buds, right? Rather than how you're feeling day to day in the long term. And with our country, if we forget history, if we ignore the past, if we turn a blind eye to the diligence that it took to create the foundation of this incredible republic that we live in, then we can quickly lose it. So guys, thanks so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to come to you, and please share this with anybody that you think would benefit from it. And just remember, as you look around today, check out nature. We have such beauty in this country. We have such beauty in this world. And remember that anything worth anything in your life is worth fighting for. It's worth that commitment, that delayed gratification, instant gratification, that consistency, to really feel the freedom that you will feel in your relationship, in your body, in your self-expression, in your artistry, in your finances, in your work, in your relationships, anywhere in this country. It's worth it. All right, so stay true, guys. Keep going, don't give up. Love you all, and until next time, keep raising the vibration. All right.